Good morning, relatives, friends, family, a few exes. It's always awkward to see you here. No. Yes. It's as Chris identified, it's going to be a really good day, and this part of the program is curated each and every year. And what we try to do with the final presentations before we send everybody home to their home fires to continue the work that the important work that you do in your community, in your classroom, in your organizations, in your institutions. We try to send you home with something good. We try to send you home with inspiration, with invigoration. We try to hold up your ideas and maybe help build on them. We try to gift this knowledge back to the people in order for you to take it home and re-gift it. And this, for me, in all of the work that I do in my digital media company that I own, this is by far our most important partnership. And the Think Indigenous podcast, so what we do is we take all of the recordings from today and we distribute them through our media company, and we put them online for people to listen to. And podcasting is what our company is focused on. And over the last couple of years, we've really seen our podcasts grow. The Think Indigenous podcast started from nothing during year one. Can you advance the slides for me? This thing's not working here. Thank you. Next slide. We put the Think Indigenous podcast on our network, Indian and Cowboy. And Indian and Cowboy is the world's only listener-supported Indigenous media platform that I started building in 2014. And what we've done is we've worked with communities, institutions, individuals, artists, thinkers, writers, to give them space online to communicate, to let their dreams come true. Next slide. And in this space, because of the work we're doing, it lives there forever. It lives online. I can't explain, what the internet is per se, but I just know that it's like some magic that ends up on your iPhone somehow. And people listen to these talks over and over and over again. Next slide, please. And our partnerships that we have with Indian and Cowboy are global partnerships. We're partnered with Twitter, with Spotify, with Facebook, and we're working really hard to continue to grow those partnerships so that us in Indian country have mainstream voices, that we're not siloed into these spaces where these types of conversations and this type of work just ends up on the conference floor. And so we've worked really hard to nurture those partnerships, and it allows shows like Think Indigenous to grow. Next slide, please. What we're going to do here today is we're going to tell stories. We're going to share personal stories and anecdotes and experiences. My professional career, a big part of my learning to storytelling. And one time there was a man from South America who came to a show in Toronto, and he watched me, and he came up to me after and he said, "I want to ask you a question. What is storytelling?" And and he was an elder, so you know how elders mess with you, and they'll ask you questions and you feel like you're being set up. So my spidey senses were tingling, and I was like, wait a minute, this is a trick. And he said, no, just tell me, what is storytelling? And I said, well, storytelling is, you're sharing a memory, you're sharing something that happened in order to try to, make people laugh or communicate an idea. And he said, no, storytelling is to remember. And he said, I want you to think about that word. And then he just walked away, just like, that was it. I want you to think about that word. And then he didn't even say goodbye, he just left. And I've been thinking about that word a lot, remember, what it means to remember. And for me, what it means to remember, if you just break apart that word, it is to remember your community. It is to remember who we are. And what I love about storytelling is that it builds a doorway for people to walk through. It builds a doorway for people to hear, to see, and to experience our lives, perhaps for the first time. Indigenous storytelling for me in Canada right now is probably the most important thing we could do to tell the rest of Canada and the world who we are. To tell stories and to remember is a profound act of love and courage. For someone to come up here to share their personal story is just a beautiful, beautiful gift. And to remember, if you think about it in a community context, to remember is to bring your members, your community members, back into the circle. To remember is to decolonize. It is to rebuild. It is to put together what was once whole, to put it together again. And I love the idea that Indigenous knowledge systems, Indigenous stories, histories, governance models, all of the things we know to be true as Indigenous people can be communicated and should be communicated through story and personal experience. And that's what we're going to do here today. We've been doing it for years now. We've featured everyone from youth to elders to PhDs. We've ran the gambit of personal stories of victory, of defeat. And some of these stories still live on with me today. Some of the people's personal experiences that have been shared up here have fundamentally changed my life. They're beautiful, beautiful gifts. Next slide, please. All in all, we've had 32 episodes of this podcast with 3 years of the conference. This will be our fourth year. And we've had 285,000 downloads of the show worldwide. Worldwide. Now, all that means is that people are listening to these stories. People are listening to the people that are up here on stage. And we get all kinds of email from people thanking us for putting this material online, thanking speakers for sharing a piece of themselves, to give a piece of themselves in order to help educate or re-educate others. We get all kinds of non-Indigenous people that are inside of classrooms with our young people saying, thank you, I've never heard that perspective before. We get all kinds of Indigenous people saying, you know, I agree with that. I want to bring that model over here. And then they reach out to the speakers to try to work together to learn and teach each other. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that has been built by this conference. And it's Chris Scribe, Yvette, and all of the team at ITEP and at USask that were brave enough to invite us to come and just take those recordings and to amplify them. For a long time, and I've heard it a couple times over the last couple of days, for a long time we've been afraid of technology. We get down on our chubby nephew that just likes to play PlayStation. Like, go outside, go hunt moose, go, whatever. And we look at technology as a bad thing. And I think we have to stop and kind of zoom out a little bit and look at technology for what it is. It's a really beautiful tool. Next slide, please. If we continue to give our young people technology and to embrace the tools of today, I think we'll be okay. The end game is not to have them learn their language through an app or through a PlayStation, but it is to offer doorways to young people to rediscover who they are. And this is a map, this is a representation of all of the downloads across the world where people are listening to this show. And you can see the darker colors are North America. But there are people all around the world listening to these stories, downloading the episodes of this podcast to consider what it means to think Indigenous. Next slide, please. Over the years, here are the names of the people that have been on the podcast. Some of you will recognize some of these names. As again, I said some were youth, some were doctors, some were language warriors, some were cultural practitioners. Probably my favorite was Maria Linklater, who last year shared her story of fostering over 350 children and sharing her love and her home with so many people. just a profound statement of love that reinforces the idea that if we are patient and kind and gentle, we can all be good teachers. And so these are the people that we've heard from so far in 4 seasons. Next slide, please. On the technology piece, I want to build on that idea and point to Basil Johnston, probably one of my favorite philosophers and Anishinaabe thinkers. But he said, traditionally, we were a contemporary peoples. And I love that idea, that no matter what, through time, Indigenous peoples always adapted and changed and picked up the tools of the day, no matter what era or what generation we're talking about. And Basil points to the idea that no matter what, through time, we always did that. We were always a contemporary peoples. We are a contemporary peoples. Dr. Littlebear yesterday is talking about motion versus stasis. We're always changing. We're always in flux and flow. And I love that idea. And I think the rest of the world really needs to understand Indigenous peoples are still here. We are contemporary, rooted in our value systems and our governance systems. We know exactly who we are. Next slide, please. Today, the offer of these talks, if you want to make the t-shirt or the bumper sticker version, is to decolonize. We're going to decolonize this space. And we're going to personalize to decolonize. We're going to bring personal stories to this stage, and we're going to talk about what it means to be and to think Indigenous. This is a quote from George Orwell from the book 1984. He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. Now, he's not necessarily talking about colonialism here, but I apply it to that idea that if we allow them or they, or as Chris Scribe would say, the damn white man, if we allow, he was really rugged sometimes this week. But if we allow them to control our present, they will control the past, they will control the future. We have to free ourselves from all of the negative narratives and all of the loops that we have running through our brains, the negative stories that we see time and time again through media on the 6 o'clock news. We have to free ourselves from that. So I rewrote the quote. Next slide, please. They, because it's not all about us, gentlemen, they who control the past control the future. They who control the present controls the past. And then I added the line, they who control the future understands their past and our present. And to me, that is the gift of Red Talks. That is the gift of what we are doing today. We are going to understand that if we look back and really grapple with the past and really understand who we are, we'll be able to look forward in a good way. But that the only way to do so is to really be present for each other, to be in the same room, in the same space. And I think in the current political and social climate, that's what we're called to do. Whatever reconciliation is or isn't, and I don't want to be political, but if Trudeau grabs one more elder by the shoulders, just one more. Just that, that look he gives, just, yeah, no, you don't get land back, it's okay, no, yeah, we love you, just sign it, your Chiefs should sell out, yeah, no, I do love you, look, don't worry about my dad, I know he was the architect of the 69 white paper, that's not me though, trust me, please, look at my eyes, I got good socks, my hair is on point, please, I love you, please. Reconciliationville, town of you and me, and the mayor is Justin Trudeau, and that's where we're headed. But to problematize that and to really ground it, we need to center Indigenous voices. We need to hear from Indigenous people from coast to coast to coast, and that's what today is all about. Are you ready to begin our Red Talks?